Welcome to Telling Tales, the place to get your fiction fix. In each episode, we'll have a story for you. Maybe you'll find yourself in a far-flung corner of the world, or deep in the French countryside, or even on the banks of the River Tyne. We'll take you to places where the past and the present merge. Rocks talk, and a curry can kill you. Sometimes funny, sometimes dark, but always entertaining. Welcome to Telling Tales. The Man Who Hated Hats. I shout at people on Northumberland Street. I don't mean to, but I do. Just things like, get out of my way, or what are you looking at, or give us £1 for a cup of coffee. Not that you can get a cup of coffee on Northumberland Street for £1. But mostly I shout about hats. I hate hats. I hate people who wear hats. The stupid, pointy way they stick out of their heads. I hate woolly hats pulled down over someone's ears. Sometimes I walk up behind them. I pull their hats off and I throw them on the ground and I dance on them. Men with hats, women with hats, kids with hats, they're all the same to me. Not the people I object to, it's just the hats. I hate hats. I shout at people with hats. I can't help myself. I'd be no good at a wedding. Sometimes they shout back, but mostly they just look at me like I'm a dog turd they've just stood in. Is it my fault people wear stupid hats? I don't think so. That's why I'm in court again. I already have an antisocial behaviour order, an ASBO they call it, has been issued against me, and I'm banned from Northumberland Street for 12 months. It isn't my fault. It's the people, their stupid hats. If there were no hats, there'd be no problem. Why don't they put a big sign on Northumberland Street saying no hats? They wouldn't hear another word from me as long as people obeyed the sign and took their hats off. They could give somebody the job to stand at the bottom of Northumberland Street and stop people with hats on and get them to take them off. I could do that. They could give me a job. I'd make sure no one was wearing a hat. What happened was, I'm not quite sure how I ended up in the back alley off Northumberland Street just a few days after the ASBO. Well, actually, I know about the back alley bit. I was keeping out of the way of a policeman. I mean, the bit about Northumberland Street. Why did I go there with this court order against me? And if the police see me, I'll be arrested. I got up in the morning never intending to go there. In fact, if you asked me where is the last place on earth I would be on that day, I would have said Northumberland Street. I want to stay in my room in the hostel. I can't get into too much trouble there. They just leave me alone in my room and I listen to the radio. I like the radio. But at 10 in the morning, there I was, walking down Northumberland Street. It was a nice warm morning, not so many people had hats on, just the daft lads with their baseball caps and the woolly hat brigade. And even then it was a bit early for them. Wasn't too bad. I do try really hard not to shout at people, and mostly I just mumble under my breath and I give them dirty looks. You have to be careful with the lads with baseball caps. Not the ones who've got it on back to front, they're just wankers, but the ones with the bent peaks who push their caps back high on their foreheads, those you have to watch. If they're on their own, it's okay, but when they're mob-handed, they can turn on you and give you a right good kicking. So there I was, taking a stroll, when I sees this copper down near Phoenix. So I thought I'd dive down the back alley near Greg's and make myself scarcely gone. And I went to crouch behind this dumpster when I gets the shock of me life. There's an old woman crashing into me and sending me flying into the middle of the alley, and I'm sitting on me arse on the ground, and I'm just about to launch into a major rant against this stupid woman, when I see the security guard stand at the top of the alley, and he's looking at me, and he had this kind of smug look on his face. And what is it about these jumped-up little bastards? They're nothing. But you put a uniform on them and a hat on their heads, and suddenly they're Vladimir Putin. He's asking, have I seen a woman with big shopping bags? I wanted to say, yes, she's hiding in my place behind the dumpster, but I just said, knobhead, this is my alley now, get lost. But he just keeps going on about seeing an old woman. But all I can see is this cap like a policeman. Only he's probably too stupid to be a policeman. These people think they're so important just because they have a hat on. And they think they can order you about, and I'm staring at them really hard, and I want to say something really nasty. But he just shrugs his shoulders, and he turns around, and he walks away. Anyway, this woman is really grateful and thanks me for not shopping her to the guard. Then she picks up her bags and starts to walk out of the alley. I had a quick look around the corner, and the security man is talking to a policeman. So she says that I have to help her, and she takes a coat from her bag and hands it to me. And I thought, this woman's crazy, so I better go along with her. Have you noticed how many crazy people there are around these days? Years ago, all the crazies be locked away, and they wouldn't cause any trouble to nobody, but these days they just let them walk the street. Anything could happen to you. Some mental case could get you with a samurai sword. They call it care in the community. I tell you, I worry sometimes. You're not safe in your own home, never mind on Northumberland Street. So I thought she could be one of them. And if I don't do what she wanted, I could find myself behind the dumpster, dead, or worse. She tells me to take my coat off and wear the one she's just pulled out of the bag. She says the guard won't spot me, and we just stroll out like a man and wife. And I tell her as soon as a Phoenix guard sees the coat, he'll gonna know it's stolen. But she says not to worry because the coat actually comes from John Lewis. And there I am, in the back alley, beside Greg's, standing there in a woman's coat. She picks up my coat and puts it on. My coat has seen better days, and it makes her look like she would stand out in a soup kitchen queue. I was laughing until she takes a hat out of her bag, and she puts it on my head. Just like that, not a word, no warning or anything. I feel the bile rise in my stomach and cramps in my legs, and my arms go all weak, and then I just threw up all over her. It was mostly cheese and pickle sandwich. Pull the hat off and throw it on the ground, and I brush some of the sick off her. And she starts going on about, it's her coat sleeve that I'm using, and I tell her I don't want my coat covered in sick, and she said if it was covered in dog turds it couldn't smell any worse. And all of a sudden, her eyes start to well up with tears, and she's begging and crying, and I tell her to shut up, she's making so much noise, and I worry that the coppers will come, and I can't stand it any more, and I pick up the hat and I put it on my head. At least as long as it was on my head, I couldn't see it. I grabbed her arm. The two of us walked towards the end of the alley with our heads down. We turned and went up Northumberland Street, away from the coppers, away from the Phoenix man. Next, I feel somebody grab my arm. Excuse me, sir, can I have a word with you about that coat you're wearing? So I'm sitting in a cell on remand. They won't give me bail as they think I'll just re-offend, and I told them I wouldn't. I promised to be good, but they didn't believe me. And to be honest, they were right. I would re-offend. It's not that I want to, it's just I cannot help myself. But I never do anybody any real harm. I might pull their hats off their heads, or I might shout a bit, but I never hurt anyone. Well, only a couple of times, and that was mainly self-defence. I'm in here, locked up with robbers, killers, druggies. I mean, I ask you, where's the justice in that? I know I shouldn't have helped that woman, but I had no choice. Anyway, it was just a bit of shoplifting, and she got bail. Remand isn't that bad, you know. The people here haven't actually been convicted of anything. They're just waiting for their case to come to court. So it's a bit more relaxed than prison. The first problem I have is not the prisoners. They keep away from me, and Anyway, only a few of them wear hats. I got a fine when I went to court, 300 quid. It might as well have been 3 million quid. I've not got a penny. I'm on invalidity pension, so they can't take anything off me. I could have gone down for all this, with breaking the ASBO and the shoplifting. I told the copper it was me that took the coat and the hats, and they dropped the charges against the old woman. I was bust for the ASBO, and I thought I might as well take the rap for the shoplifting as well. No point in getting two people into trouble, is there? Anyway, it turned out it was quite a good move, because the old lady said afterwards I'd go and stay in her gaff. Her name is Anne. She is a bit weird, but we get along okay. She has this nice little place, a bungalow in Kenton, garden and everything, a big hedge at the back, and I can sit there all day and never see a hat. She was well chuffed with what I'd done, and that kept going on and on about what a stupid woman she'd been. Her son, Godfrey, comes round to see her all the time. He's spitting feathers about me moving in, but Anne just tells him to mind his own business. She tells him it's not his house until she dies, and he protests and says he's not interested in the house, but in fact she's sharing her house with another. She tells him I'm a war hero, and how I fought for my country in Afghanistan. I never told her about that. Came out in the court case. My solicitor used it to soften up the judge, who he knew was ex-army, and it worked. The solicitor told me to expect 6 months. Anyway, I can tell by his eyes that he's lying. I bet he secretly wishes that I'd choked the old dear, and then he gets rid of both of us and the house will be his. Anne reckons it's worth quite a few bob. She bought it with the compensation when her Billy got it. He was a contractor in the shipyards. Him and 3 other blokes were cleaning the tank, and someone had mixed up the paperwork, and this one had some sort of nasty chemical, and they were dead in 5 minutes. I keep thinking about the tank with the 4 bodies, like how they were lying. Was one of them trying to get out? Did it overcome them so fast they never knew? I've seen blokes die. Sometimes it's like a light being switched off. They're there 1 second and then a thud. Bullet gets them and they drop like a stone. Their hands don't go to break their fall or anything. They just drop like their spines turn to jelly. Others fight for every last drop of life. My mate Tom died like that. He was ahead of me. I was watching him and crapping myself at the same time. I was only 20. I'd never seen action until I got to Afghan, and there I was in helmet, and there were Talibs everywhere. And Tom took a shot in chest and spun around, and I saw his rib cage explode outwards. Bullet probably bounced around inside him. He looked at me. No fear or nothing in his eyes, just shock, no disbelief. Like the look on our faces when Big Tony told us he was gay. I thought of waiting for him to laugh, but he didn't. He dropped to his knees and he started to crawl towards me. And I just ran out. And there were rounds going off all around me, but I grabbed him and dragged him back to the trench. He lived for 3 days. How he lived for 3 seconds, I don't know. There was blood everywhere, broken bones sticking out. He was a mess. The bullet had torn up everything but his heart, and it wouldn't stop pumping. They wouldn't let me stay with him. I'd taken a round in the leg, and that was me off. I got a pension because the bones shattered and because I got the medal and stuff. Honourable discharge, they called it. Big Tony says honourable discharge sounds like a sexual disease of the aristocracy. She's a tough bird, Anne. I don't usually get on with women. I prefer blokes. Not like Big Tony, mind you. I just don't feel comfortable around women. Anyway, Anne says I have to get out of the house. And I told her I'm happy just to sit around. I don't mind doing housework and stuff, and I can't cook, but I like looking after the garden. When I first saw it, the lawn was like an old threadbare carpet, and there was no flowers, all just a bunch of big weeds growing in one corner. So I planted some flowers and sorted the grass out, and it didn't look too bad. Except Anne said I had to leave the big weeds in the corner alone. She thinks I don't know what the weeds are, but I've seen fields of it in Afghanistan. Not poppies, you understand, just wacky-backy. My room's quite nice. It's quite big, and Anne helped me decorate it. I never thought about decorating before. A room was a room. You kept it clean, you kept it tidy, and that's what I know. When Anne came to the hostel to get my stuff, she said my room looked like a prison cell. I spent most of my life in institutions. Then I joined the army. Bedroom and decorating never really come up on my radar before. In the room, I've got a bed and a wardrobe and a little cabinet by the bed, and Anne got me a notice board thing, and I stick things on it with drawing pins, and there are a few cuttings up there from the Evening Chronicle about the ASBO and the shoplifting case, and I have a picture of me with Tom and Big Tony taken on board the Hercules that flew us to Afghanistan. Anne says I should display my Victoria Cross medal as well, but I don't want to. I never wanted it. If I'd saved Tom's life, I might have wanted it, but I didn't. Anne wants me to go shopping with her, which I've done before, but I don't usually go into the shop. I just stay in the car, sitting in the passenger seat, and keep my eyes on the floor, and I wait until she comes back with the trolley. And I help her put the stuff in the back of the car, and then we get home. I carry the bags into the house. Her back's not much good, and she tells me she can't push the trolley around, and I have to come in with her. I tell her I've been in the shop before, and I don't want to go anymore. Anne sits me down in the kitchen and gives me a cigarette. And I tell her I don't smoke, and she tells me this is a special cigarette. Some of the squaddies used to smoke wacky-backy, but I never touched drugs, me. Ever. I pass the cigarette back to her, but she tells me just to have a couple of puffs, and I say no. Now you take one look at Anne and say she's a very nice old lady, and a kind of nice old lady competition should come top, no problem. She says she's 70, but I bet she's a lot older than that. She's little and kind of bent, and it turns out her back started to go a few years ago, and she couldn't sleep for the pain. And this neighbour says she should smoke a joint before she goes to bed. And Anne reckons it's really good and it relaxes her, and since then she's always slept really well. I don't do drugs, but I trust Anne. I think, well, might as well try it once and see what happens. So I had a couple of puffs. And she was right. I started feeling very calm. Off we went to Morrison's, and I got out of the car, I got a trolley, and I started to follow her round. We'd gone to Morrison's at the bottom of Shields Road. It's just next to Chava Town. That's what I call Biker. It's full of those bad lads. I said to Anne it was a bad idea to go there. I used to go in when I was staying at the hostel, and I've seen them. I managed to keep out of their way. Now me, giving dirty looks and mumbling might make me stand out in Northumberland Street, but on Shields Road I blend in with the rest of the drunks and misfits. Around here there are more doctors and chemists than anywhere else in Newcastle. Half the people you meet are on long-term sick. I wonder if these people are poor because they're sick, or they're sick because they're poor. We go into Morrison's and we walk down the aisles, and Anne's putting stuff in a trolley. And I just keep my head down when suddenly I'm standing in the bakery, and there's all these people milling around in little paper hats, and all I can think about is this display of pastries. It was fantastic. Donuts, cream cakes, Danish pastries, and best of all, a big strawberry gatto. I wanted it like I used to want a woman. I wanted to rub my face in it. I wanted to lick it. I wanted to bite it. I wanted to go down on that cake so bad that I didn't notice all the commotion going on. And when I turned around, there they were coming out of the office at the back. 3 men with balaclavas pulled down over their faces, and one had a sawn-off shotgun in his hand, and they're shouting and screaming at everybody to get down, and everywhere there were people screaming and trying to get out of the way, and the robbers were screaming back, telling them to shut up and get down on the floor. And me, I'm just standing there, looking at these 3 guys with their balaclava hats pulled down over their faces, and I'm starting to get a bit annoyed. And they've interrupted the thing that was going on with the strawberry gatto, and they're spoiling my good mood when Shotgun Boy comes up to me and pushes his shotgun in my gut. You can tell this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Firstly, they only have one gun between them, and he's sticking it in my guts, and the guy on the other end is right in my face. And I'm calm. Instead of wanting to shout at him or grab his hat, I smiled at him. I could see his eyes. I could see him working out what to do about me. And I watched his eyes widen and then narrow, and then he blinked, and I headbutted him. At the same time, I grabbed the barrel of the shotgun, pulled it out of his hands, and he fell backwards. It was that easy. The next thing, the other 2 dropped the bags that they'd taken from the office and leg it out the door, leaving the gunman rolling around on the floor, screaming about his broken nose or something. I look at Anne. She looks back at me with the biggest smile, and she starts to clap. Then all the people who are getting up off the floor start to clap as well. And that night, it's on the BBC Look North, and it's in the Evening Chronicle. Local war hero foils robbery. 6 months ago, I was a public nuisance, and now I'm a local hero. There was no mention of the ASBO or the shoplifting. One of the nice things that came out of it was the manager at Morrison's was full of praise for me, kept shaking my hand. And as I left, he said, "Is there anything we can do for you? Anything, just ask." Me and Anne had strawberry gatto for tea. We ate it all, except for a small piece. I kept it to have in my room later. Thank you for listening to Telling Tales. This has been the final episode of the first season. I'm taking a break now for the summer, but I'll be back soon with more stories for you. If you have any comments on season 1 or requests, let me know. Email tellingtalesjeffprice@gmail.com. And you can support my podcast by buying me a coffee. It's only £2. Go to buymeacoffee.com and search for Jeff Price N3, or click the heart link on my Buzzsprout podcast website. Thank you, and goodbye for now.